My name is Anne. I grew up in a small village in northern Thailand, a place surrounded by mountains and the soft hum of cicadas. Our wooden house stood at the end of a dirt road, facing the rice fields that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. In the early morning, mist would float low over the paddies, and the smell of wet earth mixed with the faint aroma of my mother's jasmine soap. My childhood was simple. We didn't have much, but we had peace. My father was a quiet man who worked in the orchards nearby, and my mother sold sticky rice and mangoes at the morning market. I used to help her pack the fruit, arranging them neatly in baskets. She would always smile and say, "When your hands work hard, your heart will be light." Those words stayed with me, even when I didn't fully understand them yet. As I grew older, I dreamed of the city. I wanted to see lights brighter than the stars, to live somewhere that didn't fall silent after sunset. When I turned 18, I moved to Chiang Mai and studied hospitality at a vocational school. It wasn't easy. I worked part-time at a small coffee shop to pay rent. But every evening, when I walked back to my tiny room above a convenience store, I would look at the city lights and whisper to myself, "You're getting there," and step by step. The coffee shop became my second home. I learned how to make cappuccinos, wipe tables until they shone, and smile even when my feet ached. Tourists often came by, and sometimes I practiced my broken English with them. Most of the time they just laughed kindly, and I laughed too. Those little moments made me proud. Then one afternoon, while I was wiping the counter, a regular customer, an older woman with sharp eyes but a kind heart, asked me a question that would change everything. "And, have you ever thought of going abroad?" I laughed and said no. It sounded impossible. But she told me about her niece who worked in London at a Thai restaurant. "They need more people," she said. "The money is good. You could save enough to open your own cafe when you come back." That night, I couldn't sleep. The idea of London felt like a far-off dream, a world of gray skies, old buildings, and people who spoke too fast for me to understand. But the thought lingered. Maybe, I told myself, I should try. When I told my parents, my father said nothing for a long while. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "It's cold there," she whispered. "And you don't know anyone." I held her hands and said, "I'll be fine. I'll work hard. I'll come back with something good for us." She nodded, though I could tell she wasn't convinced. Getting the job took months. There were forms, interviews, and waiting for a visa. Every day I would pray to the Buddha statue by the window. When the approval finally came, my hands trembled as I held the paper. I was going to London. The night before I left, my mother cooked all my favorite dishes: spicy green curry, grilled chicken, sticky rice. We ate together quietly. When it was time to pack, she slipped a small packet into my bag. "Inside," she said, "is a bit of rice from our field. Wherever you go, you'll never forget where home is." At the airport, I tried to be brave. My mother hugged me so tightly I could hardly breathe. "Call me every week," she said. My father only patted my shoulder and muttered, "Take care of yourself." When I walked toward the departure gate, I didn't dare look back. I knew if I did, I wouldn't be able to go. The flight felt endless. I watched the land shrink beneath the clouds until everything turned white. When I finally landed at Heathrow Airport, the air was cold enough to bite through my jacket. People moved fast, speaking words I couldn't follow. The noise, the lights, the rush, it was overwhelming. A friend of my mother's niece met me at the airport. She was kind and helped me find my new place, a tiny flat shared with two other Thai girls. We laughed, cooked rice together, and complained about the cold. The next morning, I started my new job at the restaurant. The restaurant smelled like lemongrass and chili. The kitchen buzzed with noise, pots clanging, oil sizzling, orders shouted in both Thai and English. The owner was a strict woman from Bangkok. She handed me an apron and said, "You'll learn fast or you won't last." I nodded. Those first weeks were hard. My English was clumsy. Customers asked for things I couldn't understand. I smiled too much, bowed too often, and sometimes mixed up orders. But little by little, I improved. I learned to say "here you go" instead of just pointing, and "how's your meal?" With confidence. At night, when I returned to the flat, I called home using the cafe's Wi-Fi. My mother's voice always trembled through the line. "Are you eating enough? Do they treat you well?" I would smile even when she couldn't see it and say, "I'm fine, May. Don't worry." London was grey most of the time. The sun rarely showed its face, but when it did, the city looked almost magical, the old buildings glowing like gold. On my days off, I liked to walk along the Thames, watching people hurry by in coats and scarves. Sometimes I sat on a bench and thought about my village, the warmth of the air, the smell of jasmine. It felt like another lifetime. One evening, while I was closing the restaurant, a customer came in. He was tall, with kind eyes and a smile that seemed to soften the cold around him. He asked for tom yum soup and extra chili. I laughed and warned him, "It's very spicy." He smiled back and said, "Then it's perfect." His name was David. He worked at a construction company nearby and loved Thai food. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Soon, I didn't need to ask what he wanted, I just brought it with a smile. He always left big tips and said, "You make this place feel like home." I didn't know then how much that sentence would mean in the years to come. At night, I began to look forward to seeing him. He would ask about Thailand, about my family, about why I came here. He told me about his dreams, to travel, to learn to cook Thai food, to one day visit Chiang Mai. The more we talked, the more I felt something warm growing between us. Something gentle, unexpected, and frightening. Because deep down, I knew I might be falling in love, and that was the beginning, the first small spark that would light up my world before everything slowly turned to smoke. David and I grew close quietly, almost without noticing. He would stop by the restaurant every other day, sometimes just to order tea and talk. He asked about Thai food, about why I smiled even when I was tired, about what life was like in a village surrounded by rice fields. I told him stories of the rainy season, of the smell of lemongrass in my mother's kitchen, and he listened with the kind of attention that made me feel seen. After work, he sometimes waited outside so we could walk together to the bus stop. London nights were cold and damp, but next to him the air felt softer. He told me about his family, a mother who lived far away, a father who had passed when he was young. He said he liked simple things, building things with his hands, music, cooking breakfast on weekends. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed since I left home. A few months later, He asked me to go with him to a Sunday market. It was crowded, noisy, full of colors and smells that reminded me of Thailand. He bought me a scarf, saying the color matched my eyes. When he took my hand, I didn't pull away. That day felt like the beginning of something new, fragile, but full of light. We started spending weekends together. He showed me parts of the city I'd never seen, the parks, the old streets by the river, the tiny bakery where he bought his favorite pastries. When I was with him, I forgot the loneliness that used to sit quietly in my heart. One evening, after walking for hours in the drizzle, he turned to me and said softly, "And I don't want to just date you. I want you in my life." His voice trembled slightly, like he was afraid I'd say no. My heart pounded. I nodded, unable to speak. That was the night we became something more than two people crossing paths in a restaurant. Our relationship grew stronger with time. He was patient with my English, helping me pronounce words, laughing when I got them wrong. I cooked for him sometimes, teaching him how to use fish sauce and coconut milk. He tried to teach me to play guitar, but I could never keep up with the chords. We were two people from different worlds, building a small world of our own. A year later, he proposed. It was nothing grand, no dinner, no crowd, just the two of us in the park where we first met. He handed me a small silver ring and said, "Marry me, and we'll build something together." I cried before I could answer. The wedding was simple but warm. A few friends from the restaurant came, and some of his colleagues. I wore a white dress that wasn't new but felt perfect. When he said "I do," I felt that maybe I had found my home in this cold foreign city. We moved into a small house in the suburbs, with white walls and a little garden out back. David worked long hours at a construction firm. I took care of the house, learned to drive, and studied English at night. We laughed often, cooked together, and dreamed of traveling to Thailand one day so he could meet my parents. When I found out I was pregnant, David cried. He lifted me off the ground and said, "We're going to be a family." Those months were filled with excitement. He painted the nursery himself, in pale yellow, and bought tiny clothes we didn't yet need. When our son Jason was born, everything changed. The world became softer, slower, and every sound he made felt like music. The first few years of Jason's life were the happiest I can remember. David was a devoted father. He would hold Jason against his chest and hum old songs until the baby fell asleep. Sometimes he would bring his guitar into the nursery and play softly while I sat nearby, watching them with a heart too full for words. But life has a way of testing even the strongest happiness. It started small, almost invisible. One night, while I was putting Jason to bed, I heard the faint clicking of a mouse from the living room. David was on his laptop, eyes fixed on the screen. "What are you doing?" I asked. He smiled. "Just playing a game with friends. Online poker, just for fun." I didn't think much of it. Everyone needs a little escape. He worked hard, and I wanted him to relax. But soon, the sound of that clicking became constant. He stayed up late, sometimes until dawn, the blue light of the screen glowing on his face. He started talking about odds, numbers, lucky streaks. Sometimes he won small amounts and would grin like a boy, saying, "See? Easy money." I laughed at first, not realizing how deep the hole was. Months passed. His moods began to shift, calm one day, irritable the next. Some mornings he didn't go to work. When I asked, he said he was taking time off. Bills piled up on the counter. I offered to go back to work full-time, but he said, no need. I'll take care of us. But he didn't. The money began to vanish faster than I could ask questions. He started borrowing, first from friends, then from people I didn't know. When I asked about it, he snapped, "Don't you trust me?" The man who had once been gentle now had shadows under his eyes. His laughter faded. He drank more, spoke less. The guitar gathered dust in the corner. I tried to help. I searched for counseling programs, printed information about gambling addiction. I begged him to go. He promised to stop, but promises became empty words. Every time he said, "This is the last game," I wanted to believe him. Jason was 4 then. He started asking why Daddy looked sad all the time. I told him Daddy was tired from work. But the truth was, the man I loved was slipping away, inch by inch. One evening, after another argument about money, David threw his phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. Jason screamed. I held my son close, whispering that it was okay, though my own hands trembled. David stood there, staring at us as if he didn't recognize who we were. Then he turned and walked out into the night. He came back hours later, smelling of beer, his face pale. "I'm sorry," he murmured. I wanted to believe him so badly. For a few days, he tried. He avoided the computer, spent time with Jason, made breakfast. I dared to hope again. But addiction is a quiet thief, it doesn't leave easily. Within weeks, he was back to gambling. This time he hid it, locking himself in the study. I knew from the silence, the kind that hums like tension in the air, that it was happening again. Sometimes, while folding Jason's clothes, I would look at our wedding photo on the shelf. We were smiling under the bright sun, full of love and dreams. I would touch the frame gently and whisper, "Where did we go wrong?" The cracks that began as whispers were turning into fractures. The warmth that once filled our home was fading, replaced by something colder than the London rain, and deep inside, a part of me began to understand, the life I had built here might not last. The breaking point did not come suddenly. It crept into my life like fog, soft and almost invisible at first, until one day I could no longer see my way forward. David's gambling had turned from a habit into a hunger. He no longer spoke of small wins or friendly games, he chased losses with desperation, believing that the next hand, the next click, would change everything. The mornings became quiet. He stopped going to work altogether. I would wake up to the sight of him asleep on the couch, his laptop open beside him, the faint glow still shining on his face. Coffee went cold on the table. I tried to wake him gently, but he'd brush me off. "Just a bad night," he'd mutter. "It'll be fine." But nothing was fine. The bills piled higher. Some envelopes were marked "Final Notice." When I asked him about them, he grew defensive. "I'll sort it out," he'd say, but he never did. I began hiding bits of cash from the grocery money just to buy milk for Jason. Our son was 5 then, bright, curious, and far too young to understand the shadows growing in our house. He used to wait at the window for David to come home from work, but now David was always home, and yet somehow never present. There were good days, of course, addiction always leaves a few. He would wake up cheerful, cook breakfast, tell us stories about his plans. He promised we'd visit Thailand that year, see my parents, let Jason run through the rice fields I'd told them about. I wanted to believe him. I wanted so badly to hold on to the man I had once loved. Then, one afternoon, I came home early from my shift at the cafe. The living room was a mess, papers scattered, bottles on the floor, and the laptop open with flashing numbers across the screen. David sat hunched, his eyes wide with panic, and "I just need more time," he said before I could even speak. "I can win it back. I swear." "Win what back?" I asked. "Our savings," he whispered. "And the credit cards." My knees went weak. I realized then that we had nothing left. He had sold my gold necklace, the one my mother gave me, and even pawned his guitar. I wanted to scream, but my voice broke into tears instead. That night, we fought. It wasn't the first argument, but it was the first time I truly felt fear. He wasn't violent, but the rage in his eyes frightened me more than shouting ever could. He slammed the door and disappeared into the night, leaving Jason and me in silence. I held my son close as he slept, his small hand clutching my shirt. I watched the moonlight move across the floor and realized that I no longer recognized the life around me. The man I loved was gone, replaced by a stranger whose only love was chance. He came back the next morning, eyes bloodshot, smelling of beer. He didn't apologize this time. He just sat down and said, "You don't understand what pressure feels like." I wanted to tell him that I did, that every night I lay awake counting coins, that every breath I took felt like a battle, but the words wouldn't come. Weeks turned into months. His debts grew, and so did the tension. Sometimes he disappeared for 2 or 3 days, returning exhausted, broke, and ashamed. I stopped asking where he went. Asking only brought lies, and lies hurt more than silence. One evening, Jason came running to me, clutching a small toy car. "Mommy," he said, "Daddy shouted at me. He said I broke his lucky charm." It was just a keychain, a cheap plastic thing he believed brought him luck. I found it later, broken in half. I wanted to tell David it didn't matter. But he was already gone again. It was then that I realized something had to change. Not someday. Not when he got better. Now, I started planning quietly. I took extra shifts at work, telling David I needed the hours for practice. I saved every coin I could hide. I opened a new bank account under my name, afraid he might find out. Each day, I packed a few things, clothes, documents, Jason's toys, into a suitcase hidden at the back of the closet. At night, I watched my son sleep and whispered promises he couldn't hear. "One day, we'll go home. I'll keep you safe." But leaving wasn't easy. There was still love buried under the pain, old memories that whispered, "Maybe he'll change." Every time he smiled, even faintly, hope stirred again. And hope, I learned, can be cruel. The final straw came on a stormy night in early spring. David lost everything: money, patience, control. He shouted at the computer, at the world, at himself. When the screen went dark, he threw the chair, smashing it against the wall. Jason screamed. I pulled him into my arms, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. When David saw the fear in our eyes, he froze. For a moment, I saw something human flicker there, shame, maybe regret. Then he walked out into the rain without a word. I locked the door behind him. That was the first night I truly understood what it meant to be alone. The next morning, the house was silent. The rain had stopped, but everything still felt gray. I made breakfast for Jason, though neither of us ate much. I packed our bags while he watched cartoons, pretending nothing was wrong. When David returned that evening, drenched and pale, he looked defeated. He mumbled apologies, swore he would change, begged me not to give up on him. I listened, but inside, I had already made my decision. That night, after he fell asleep, I wrote a letter. I am not angry, it said. But I have to choose what's best for our son. Please take care of yourself. I placed it on the table beside the empty bottles. Before dawn, I lifted Jason into my arms. The world outside was quiet, the streets still wet from rain. I didn't look back as we walked away from that house. At the airport, as the plane took off, I watched the clouds drift by and felt both pain and relief twist together in my chest. I whispered to my sleeping child, "We're going home now. Everything will be different." When we landed in Thailand, the warm air felt almost unreal after years of cold gray skies. My mother met us at the airport. She didn't say a word, she just held me so tight I thought I might break. For the first time in a long while, I let myself cry freely. We went back to my childhood home, where the rice fields swayed in the wind and the air smelled of rain and earth. I slept in my old room that night, listening to the crickets outside and the soft breathing of my son beside me. I should have felt peace, but all I could feel was the emptiness left behind by everything I'd lost. I didn't know it yet, but this was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning of a new one that would test me in different ways. Because escaping the storm doesn't mean the sky will stay clear forever. Starting over was both a relief and a challenge. The first few weeks back in Thailand felt strange, like waking from a long dream where everything looked familiar but slightly changed. The air was thicker, warmer, full of sounds I hadn't heard in years, the chatter of neighbors, the hum of cicadas, the faint clatter of motorbikes on the road. For the first time in so long, I could breathe without fear. My mother welcomed Jason and me into her small wooden house as if we had never left. She cooked our favorite dishes, filled our room with the scent of lemongrass and garlic, and hummed softly as she moved about the kitchen. Jason adjusted quickly. He ran barefoot through the yard, chasing chickens and laughing at things I'd forgotten how to notice. His laughter was my medicine, but freedom had its own burdens. I had no job, no savings, no clear plan. The first nights, after Jason fell asleep, I would sit by the window and stare at the rice fields stretching under the moonlight, wondering how I would rebuild everything from nothing. The quiet no longer felt peaceful. It reminded me of what I'd lost. My mother told me not to worry. "We'll manage," she said, though I could see the concern in her eyes. The next morning, I took a bus into town and asked every shop if they needed help. By the end of the week, a cafe owner offered me a part-time position. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The cafe sat at the corner of a busy street, painted light green with hanging plants at the entrance. I learned to use an old espresso machine, to smile at tourists, to serve drinks with calm confidence. The owner was kind, and the customers liked me. After a few months, I began to feel like I was standing on my own feet again. At night, I baked Thai desserts to sell online, sticky rice with mango, coconut pudding, banana cake. The smell filled our little house. Sometimes Jason helped me, licking the spoons and sprinkling sesame seeds with more enthusiasm than accuracy. We would laugh until we were both too tired to keep going. Life was simple again, though not easy. But simplicity felt safe. The quiet rhythm of work and motherhood replaced the chaos I had left behind. There were nights when memories of David returned, his laughter, the way he had once looked at me with warmth. Sometimes I dreamed of him playing guitar, Jason dancing beside him. In the dream, everything was peaceful again. But every time I woke, the silence reminded me that the dream was gone. I kept his pictures in a wooden box under my bed, along with a letter I never sent. I didn't hate him. I didn't even wish him ill. I just couldn't let him stay in my life. Jason grew fast. He learned Thai slowly, mixing English words in every sentence. The local kids teased him at first, but his smile won them over. He brought friends home, and the sound of their laughter filled our yard. Watching him, I realized children are born with an ability to heal far faster than adults. A year later, with the help of a small loan and my savings, I opened a tiny coffee stall in front of our house. I called it Jason's home. It was nothing fancy, just a wooden counter, a few tables, and a sign my mother painted by hand. The first day, I sold only 3 cups. The second day, 10. By the end of the month, I had regular customers, teachers, shopkeepers, young couples who liked to sit under the mango tree nearby. The work was exhausting but fulfilling. I woke before dawn to prepare beans and syrup, then walked Jason to school before opening the shop. My mother helped when she could, sitting behind the counter with her gentle smile. We didn't make much money, but every evening, when I closed the stall and looked at what we'd earned, I felt proud. Sometimes tourists stopped by. When they realized I could speak English, they asked about my story. I didn't tell them everything, just that I had lived abroad and decided to come home for my son. Most of them nodded in understanding. A few said, "You're brave." I smiled, though inside I knew it wasn't bravery, it was survival. But quiet doesn't mean the past disappears. One morning, I opened my email and saw a message from David. My hands froze. It had been almost 2 years since I left England. The message was short, and, "I don't know if you'll read this. I just want to tell you I'm sorry. I've been getting help. I've stopped gambling. I think about you and Jason every day. Please tell him that his father loves him. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you're both okay." I read the words again and again. Tears came quietly. Not out of anger, but out of something deeper, a grief that had softened into understanding. I didn't reply. Some words didn't need answers. That night, I took out the wooden box, placed the printed email beside his photos, and closed it gently. It no longer hurt to see his face. Instead, I felt a strange calm, as if part of me had finally made peace with what was gone. The next day, I opened my cafe early. The sunrise painted the rice fields gold, and Jason was helping me arrange chairs before school. My mother brewed tea, humming her favorite song. The scent of fresh coffee filled the air. I realized that happiness doesn't have to shout, it can live quietly in mornings like this, in the sound of spoons clinking and the laughter of people you love. Years had taken much from me, but they had also given me something precious, the strength to begin again. I wasn't the same woman who had once cried in the dark of a foreign country. I was someone who had walked through the storm and found sunlight on the other side, and though I still carried memories of David, they no longer chained me. They were part of the story that made me who I am, a story not of loss, but of endurance. When people ask if I miss England, I smile and say, sometimes. But my heart is home now. 5 years have passed since the morning I opened that little cafe and called it Jason's home. The wooden sign has faded from the sun, but I still keep it hanging by the entrance. It reminds me how far we've come. The days move slowly here, in the best way. Roosters crow at dawn. The air smells of coffee and rain, and the laughter of children drifts from the school across the field. Life has found its rhythm again. Jason is 12 now, taller than my shoulder, with his father's blue eyes and my smile. He helps me every morning before school, wiping tables and greeting customers with a shy grin. People in the village adore him. They say he's polite, hardworking, and always cheerful. When I watch him talk to customers in Thai mixed with English, I feel a surge of pride that words can't hold. He has grown in a world I built with my bare hands, piece by piece, after everything fell apart. My mother, though slower now, still comes to the cafe every afternoon. She sits near the window with her tea, watching the people come and go. Sometimes she laughs softly and says, "You've done well, Anne. You found peace." And I smile, though I know peace wasn't something I found, it was something I learned to build. The scars of the past haven't vanished. They're just quieter. Every so often, when the night is still and the crickets sing, I think of David. I no longer feel anger. The pain that once felt endless has faded into something tender, like a healed wound that only aches in the rain. I wonder if he's well, if he truly changed, if he still thinks of the boy who once called him Daddy. One evening, as I was closing the cafe, Jason brought me a letter. It had come from overseas. The handwriting was familiar, slanted, careful. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Dear Anne, I hope this reaches you. I've been working at a small carpentry shop outside London. It's quiet work, but honest. I've been clean for 3 years now. I don't expect anything from you, but I think about you and Jason often. I'm sorry for the man I was. I wish I could show you who I've become. Tell Jason that if he ever wants to write, I'll be here, David." I read it twice. Then a third time. The old ache rose for a moment, but it was gentler now. I folded the letter and placed it in the wooden box where all the others rested. For the first time, I whispered out loud, "I forgive you." The room was quiet, but I swear the air felt lighter. The next morning, I didn't mention the letter to Jason. He was still too young to carry my memories. Instead, I watched him ride his bike to school, his backpack bouncing, sunlight catching his hair. He looked free. That was enough for me. In the years that followed, our little cafe became part of the village's life. Teenagers came after school to study. Old men gathered in the mornings to talk politics. Tourists stopped for coffee and left with photos and smiles. Sometimes, when people asked about the story behind the name Jason's home, I just said, "It's named after my son, who reminds me what home truly means." When the evening breeze swept through the fields, I often sat on the porch with my mother. We watched the sunset paint the sky in orange and gold. She would sometimes take my hand and say, "See? You didn't need to be rich to be happy." She was right. Happiness had nothing to do with money. It was in the smell of roasted beans, the laughter of my child, the way the earth glowed after the rain. Jason started playing guitar a few years ago. He said he wanted to learn because he'd seen an old picture of David with one. I hesitated but nodded. I bought him a second-hand guitar from a shop in town. He practiced every day, his fingers stumbling at first, then growing sure and graceful. Last year, at his school's music night, he stood on stage and played "You Are My Sunshine," the same song David used to hum when Jason was a baby. As I listened, tears welled in my eyes, not of sadness, but of gratitude. The song that once reminded me of heartbreak now sounded like healing. Every note felt like a bridge between past and present, pain and peace. When he finished, he ran to me, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. "Mom," he said, "was I good?" I hugged him tightly. "You were perfect," I whispered. "Your dad would have been proud." He smiled, and for a moment, I saw both of us, past and present, standing together in that light. That night, after closing the cafe, I stepped outside. The sky was clear, filled with stars. One star shone brighter than the rest, steady and calm. I imagined it was David, somewhere out there, finally at peace. "Thank you," I said softly, "for what you gave me and for what you taught me. I wish you peace, too." Life has a way of circling back, not to repeat, but to remind. The woman I was in London, the frightened wife who cried herself to sleep, feels like a distant memory. I no longer measure my life by what I've lost, but by what I built. Every challenge, every heartbreak, turned into a brick that shaped the person I am now. Sometimes women from nearby villages visit the cafe and tell me their stories, of husbands who left, of dreams that broke. I listen, pour them coffee, and say gently, "You'll be okay. It takes time, but you'll find your strength." They often look at me with disbelief, and I understand. Once, I didn't believe either. But strength doesn't arrive all at once, it grows quietly, like a seed taking root beneath the soil. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Jason will study in the city, maybe he'll travel back to England someday. Whatever he chooses, I'll let him go with an open heart. My job was never to shield him from every pain, but to teach him how to face the world with kindness and courage. Tonight, as I lock the cafe door and look up at the stars, I realize something simple yet profound. Peace isn't the absence of pain, it's the ability to live with it. To smile despite it, and to keep loving anyway. I go inside, check on my mother sleeping peacefully, then peek into Jason's room. He's asleep, the guitar beside him, his face relaxed. I whisper, "You're my sunshine, my reason, my quiet strength." Then I turn off the light, feeling the night wrap around our small house. Outside, the world hums softly, the sound of life, of moving forward. The storm is long gone now, but I carry its lessons gently in my heart. Love, loss, forgiveness, endurance, all threads woven together into the tapestry of who I am. I close my eyes and breathe deeply. Tomorrow, I'll open the cafe again, greet the morning, and start another day. Not because everything is perfect, but because, finally, I am at peace, and that, I realize, is enough.